From the Asian mainland to the Pacific Ocean, the 13,000 islands that make up the world's largest archipelago stretch almost 5,000 miles. Its islands are inhabited by 300 ethnic groups, speaking over 300 languages and dialects. And with over 200 million people, it's the fourth largest country on the planet. Better known for its political and social unrest than its surf and sand, Indonesia is one of the most diverse and exciting countries to travel. With the prospect of fun and adventure, our group of 4 set out to travel from Jakarta to Flores in 60 days, covering a span of 1,500 miles through some of the most remote regions in southern Indonesia. This here's Greg. His relaxed style would suit the rigors of traveling in Asia, but a morning person, he was not. Bill was our cultural ambassador, and despite the fact he didn't speak the language, he always managed to make conversation and provide us all with some comic relief. Catherine was the diplomat and the bravest one in the group, but how she managed to keep her sanity with 3 other guys, we'll never know.
Let me tell you, it's torture being beside Bill, though.
I'm Steve, and I got hit by the travel bug over 35 countries ago.
Looks like a traditional wedding feast here. Should be good. I think I've taken a little too much, though.
Come along for the ride as we travel by plane, ferry, boat, donkey, and on foot to explore and uncover the real Indonesia. Skyscrapers and endless traffic. This was Jakarta, the bustling capital of Indonesia, containing over 10 million people. Our first reaction was at how modern this city was. Americanization is alive and well. The reality was we were in the third world, but Jakarta looked like a westernized concrete jungle. All it took was a hair-raising ride through the streets on a local Baja to remind us we were definitely far from home. The whole group finally met at a youth hostel where we planned the course of our journey that would take us over mountains, volcanoes, oceans, rivers, and eventually bring us face to face with the Komodo dragon. Our first destination would be Kuta Beach, Bali, a 40-hour bus ride from Jakarta across the island of Java. Sleeping on a bus for 2 days, winding up and down dirt and paved roads was our group's crude introduction to traveling in Indonesia. After 2 flat tires and stopping to fix a third, we were learning to accept mechanical failures on public buses as a common experience. Getting on the ferry, we anxiously awaited the party scene in Kuta Beach, Bali. We did feel a bit guilty though, thirsty for a beer with a Muslim mosque on board. Oh well. Kuta Beach, Bali is the vacation getaway spot for Australians. Cheap and tacky is the order of the day. Drawn in by neon glitter, pounding disco beats, and fellow backpackers and surfers alike, we decided to join in the fun at the popular Sari Club. After a toxic dose of the Sari Club drink of choice, Iraq, made from rice wine and whatever else was around, the night got a little wild, and we ended up doing a little surfing of our own. In daylight, Kuta Beach, Bali seems sleazy. Street hustlers could be found selling everything from imitation cologne to wood carvings. While on the beach, we found ourselves playing the bartering game. You could never get into bartering halfway. It was all or nothing.
How do we know it's silver?
These guys were pros. Once the process began, you always ended up spending more money for more things than you had originally intended.
What is this? Blow dart, man. You hand what? Poison blow dart.
Instead of just one silver ring, this vendor tried to sell Bill a blow dart from Rinjani, which was a lot more expensive. He told him it might be useful for when he meets the Komodo dragon.
This guy doesn't understand that this is all I have. He's in 25, right? But 20 is a good deal, man. Now I have to go haggle him for some darts.
At our hostel, the group went over the plans for Bali. Sunrise tomorrow morning. Stay in Lavina the next day.
Party.
That's what.
We figured out the cheapest and easiest way to do the things we wanted to do was by renting a Jeep and driving there ourselves. But the only Jeep we could afford was a two-seater, which meant for the four of us in our gear, the ride was going to be far from luxurious.
This is kind of a tight fit for two people. 3 towels. I packed those towels. Brutal.
Don't need seatbelts in Bali, they tell us. They're just not necessary. But as you can see from this traffic, you certainly do. It's a crazy nightmare out there on the streets. On the road, we came across a Balinese art gallery that doubles as a school for young, talented artists. A teacher at the school told us that some of his students' paintings sold for as much as $500 US and took 2 to 4 months to paint. This isn't surprising considering they don't use brushes but small pieces of pointy bamboo instead. The Balinese obviously drew a lot of their artistic inspiration from the beauty of the island. It is an island of contrast, from the simmering cauldron of Mount Agung, which had erupted only 3 months prior to our visit, to the serene beauty of Lake Penalokan. Bali was starting to bring out the passion within us.
Let me tell you, it's torture being beside Bill, though.
Although we were learning a lot about Indonesian culture, we were also finding out about the adversity of traveling in a group. We picked up a hitchhiker named Bimo who invited us to a Balinese cockfight. We jumped at the opportunity. This was going to be an adventure.
Man, just do.
It's meant to do like this. It won't see the cockfighting.
Ah, so secret code.
Yeah.
Ah.
Before we entered the fight, Bimo explained that everyone who watched had to donate 5,000 Indonesian rupiah, or $3 US, as a bribe to the police. Apparently the police would show up and threaten arrest if they didn't receive any money. The dirt makeshift arena was filled with strained expressions of anxiety. These men were definitely serious gamblers. You're going to choose the winning one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And you're going to test for its, like, the strongest bird?
Yeah, strong. And look more muscle, you know.
Caught up in the excitement, I thought I'd try my luck at gambling on Bimo's cock. When the cocks were armed and ready for battle, they were brought into the arena. Only minutes before the duel to death, people were given a last chance to bet. And then the cockfight began. As luck would have it, Bimo's cock won, and I was a few dollars richer. And in tradition, the winner of the fight brought home the loser for dinner.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
The loser!
The loser, the winner.
Bimo's family would be eating well that night. On our way to Padang Bai to catch a ferry to Lombok, we visited a Balinese open-air market.
We have here the local soup, a mixture of noodles, chilies, and unidentifiable pieces of meat. But it's supposed to be good, so I'll try.
The market had everything from fresh food to cheap clothing and local cuisine. We were amazed at the variety of exotic fruit the friendly vendors had to sell, from star fruit to prickly skin lychees. All over Bali, monkeys could be found along roads and hanging from trees. Outside of the marketplace, we ran into some particularly aggressive ones that wouldn't let us pass until we gave them some food. We also encountered some wild mangy dogs that the Balinese believe were reincarnations of evil humans. From Padang Bai, we took a ferry across the Bali Strait to the island of Lombok.
Wait for me!
The ride was long but relaxing. The pace which we were traveling at had left us tired. The ferry gave us a chance to relax and prepare for a new day. Docked in Lombok Harbor, our ears were greeted with the Muslim call to prayer. We grew to be quite familiar with this sound because Muslims were required to pray 5 times a day. While staying with a Hindu family in Chaknagara, Lombok, we learned to what extent religion influenced the lives of the Indonesian people. The family explained to us that every Indonesian is required by law to be a member of one of the 5 state religions: Hinduism, Muslim, Christianity, Buddhism, or one of the hundreds of tribal religions. Hinduism was taken very seriously by our host family. It was their idea for us to visit the local temple for a blessing. As luck and superstition were becoming our guides through a foreign land, praying in a Hindu temple was a small price to pay for some divine protection. Dressed in traditional Hindu costumes, the 4 of us and our host Dudak entered a 700-year-old temple. We were told that incense was a vital part of meditation, as it helped bring out the spirits of the gods. We placed the incense in front of the 3 temples representing the Hindu gods Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Dudak advised we sit in the middle of the temple and clear our minds of our thoughts to bring the energy of the gods into our souls. After washing our hands in holy water, we felt mentally and physically ready to hit the road again. But this time, by moped. Mopeds gave us a more intimate view of the countryside. For $4 a day, mopeds took us into areas otherwise unapproachable by cars. Because mopeds were the prime means of transportation, whole families could be seen precariously balanced together on one seat. One couldn't ask for a more exhilarating way to see the Lombok countryside.
If ever there was a place to get Japanese encephalitis and malaria, man, this would be it.
While backpacking through Indonesia, one place we kept learning about was Gili Trawangan, one of the 3 Gili islands off the northern coast of Lombok. The cool, mellow atmosphere, friendly inhabitants, and cheap dwellings had made Gili Trawangan famous among fellow backpackers in Asia. We decided to go and check out this bohemian paradise ourselves. We took a donkey cart to Bangsal, Lombok, where we waited for a ferry and learned some disturbing news. We met up with a fellow North American named Stu, who had been studying the impact of tourism on Gili Trawangan as a college thesis. He told us that the Indonesian government had taken all the Gili people off their land, destroyed their homes and businesses, on the premise that the locals had no licenses. According to the village leader, the Gili people had licenses for their homes and businesses, but were refused renewals. We found out this was because the Indonesian government was intending on selling licensed ship at a considerably higher rate to a wealthy consortium of businessmen who wanted to develop a huge resort on the island.
Government coming with the people from Lombok, around 200 people from Lombok, and then the meeting broke down the house here. And then the people here just cry. Yeah.
All of the bungalows, dive shops, and restaurants lining the beach that were unable to afford the price of renewing their licenses were ransacked and destroyed by government forces. The once peaceful nature of Gili Trawangan was shattered. So we decided to do what little we could to help rebuild their homes and move them to a more remote area of the island. The Gili people took a liking to us and showed their gratitude for our support. We were given fresh coconut juice and invited to an evening of festivities at one of the few homes left standing near the beach.
That's damn good, man.
During the evening's festivities, we said our farewells over a local magical elixir of mushroom tea. Looming in the distance from Gili Trawangan was Mount Rinjani. Famed for its great beauty and eerie isolation, Mount Rinjani is the third highest volcano in Indonesia. Rinjani, which translates to where the child is born, is one of the most sacred places of worship in all of Asia for Hindus, Muslims, and animists. Fascinated by the superstition and folklore surrounding Mount Rinjani, we decided to see it for ourselves. Our patience wore thin when the bus became crowded. Greg in particular had a difficult time. The Indonesian public transit system wasn't designed for giants.
This bus has capacity to seat 15 to 20 and it comfortably seats 40. And we could probably fit another 40 more.
After a 3-hour cramped ride, we were anxious to stretch our legs. However, I don't think we were prepared for what was in store for us. A narrow dirt path was our only trail, winding through dense jungles and savannas up the rugged Mount Rinjani. At times the trail was slow and dangerous, each step reminding us of the difficult climb we had before us. Only a third of the way up, we realized we were running out of water.
Well, we are now on the north face of the Mount Rinjani crater here in Lombok, Indonesia, about 1,500 meters above sea level. And we're hoping to make it to camp by the time night comes.
We spent the first night a short day's hike away from the crater rim. Completely fatigued, we all began to think about the things we missed from home.
I miss Subway sub.
I could name about 100 things that I miss. Miss cheese. I miss milk. I miss cereal. I miss barbecues. I miss steak.
Mount Rinjani. A lot of fun.
The next afternoon, our weather-beaten, tired group of 4 reached the misty crater rim. Perched on the rim, we felt incredibly insignificant and helpless. The only water in sight was a 5-hour climb down the crater wall to Segera Anak. Tantalized by the vast size of the lake, we licked our chapped lips and attempted the steep climb down.
No.
Segera Anak remained but a mirage in the distant horizon. A dense fog had moved in and prevented us from going any further. Frustrated, we aborted our quests and scrambled to our campsite before nightfall. After a restless night, the morning brought a wonderfully clear view of Rinjani. Shrouded in clouds throughout the afternoon, it seems the best time to catch an unimpeded view is in the calm early morning. For a brief moment, our anxieties over water subsided. The agony and suffering we had endured was now replaced with a spectacular view of epic proportions. Although dehydrated, we felt almost satisfied as we began our descent to the bottom of Mount Rinjani. Stumbling to a clearing, we dropped our packs and rested. We knew we couldn't go much further without water, and we began searching a nearby riverbed for rain pools. A small pool of stagnant water caught our attention. It wasn't much, but through the filter, it did just fine. Near the bottom, we could hear the welcome sound of a waterfall in the distance. After 3 days without a shower, to say we bathed and drank gloriously would be a gross understatement. The next leg of our journey found ourselves on board a Floresian fishing vessel called the Karya Bahari. It was to take us 700 miles through some of the most rare and exotic islands of Indonesia. Starting in Bangsal, Lombok, we would island hop across the northern part of Sumbawa and on to Komodo and Rinca Island, home of the world's largest lizard, the Komodo dragon. Life on board the boat was relaxed and a nice change of pace from the rigorous trek up Mount Rinjani. Our crew proved not only to be competent sea mariners, but excellent cooks as well. We ate everything from the national dish nasi goreng, or fried rice, to clams sautéed in garlic sauce. We were finally given a chance to reflect on our experiences while enjoying the beautiful weather and scenery. Greg even had an opportunity to kick back and do a little fishing. Unfortunately, it seemed no sooner had we begun our journey than a propeller had broke on the boat's motor. The crew managed on one propeller for a whole day. However, the following morning they decided to stop at a local shipbuilding village on the southwestern end of Sumbawa called Wera Village. Wera looked as if it had never been seen by Western man. Thatched huts and half-built wooden ship hulls were the only real distinguishable features. When we arrived on land and were surrounded by screaming happy children clothed with North American heavy metal t-shirts, we realized we weren't that far from home. Everywhere, dirt alleyways and stilted houses were teeming with smiling, admiring faces. We felt like celebrities. A couple of boys who spoke some English were able to tell us the history of this primitive village. Wera had been a tiny port town until the eruption of nearby Mount Api in 1985. For safety reasons, the Indonesian government relocated the shipbuilding people at the base of Api to Wera, transforming it into a prosperous shipbuilding town. Realizing we were going to have to spend the night while a new propeller was brought in from a nearby town, the boys invited us to stay in their home. Delighted by the idea of sleeping on stable, sturdy ground, we all gratefully accepted.
Oh, really? Yeah. So there's coconut?
In the morning, we sat around the living room with the boys' entire family, relaying our travel experiences while drinking some of the strongest coffee we had ever had. Interested in knowing what it was we were drinking that was giving us such a jolt, we asked our friends. They told us that Wera coffee was made from a special blend of coffee beans, coconuts, and rice. Whatever it was, it certainly worked. We were wired.
I think I have a buzz in that coffee. Pretty strong coffee, eh?
Yeah. Very strong coffee. Wakes you up in the morning. Yeah. Hello!
Hey!
We tried to maintain our cool as we were led through the village. We were offered betel nut by some elder village ladies. This mild narcotic comes from the betel nut tree, and when eaten like chewing tobacco, it is supposed to help a woman's fertility. We're not quite sure what it did for Bill, though. That afternoon, the boat was repaired and we were off to explore the coral reefs of the uninhabited Banda Island. Reaching the outskirts of Komodo Island in the Sape Strait, we noticed drastic changes in the water. Where smooth currents were before, now were vicious riptides and whirlpools.
This water is brutal.
They said that sometimes if you don't have a big boat or something, they said it's so strong it just drags you away.
Well, I would imagine like during the rainy season, these whirlpools would probably really suck you under.
This is the strangest looking island I've ever seen. I mean, it's beautiful, but
It's Jurassic.
yeah, it is Jurassic.
Wary about the unexpected, we were nonetheless ready to see at long last the world's largest monitor lizard, the Komodo dragon. Komodo Island is part of the Taman National Park, which was designed by the Indonesian government as a wildlife preserve. It protects the Komodo dragon and the hundreds of insects, snakes, and rare fauna that exist on Komodo and the neighboring Rinca Island. We trekked all over Komodo with a group of fellow backpackers who, like us, had traveled far and wide just to see this bizarre animal. Our guide told us to remain in a group because Komodos were solitary predators, which meant they attacked single prey but refrained from striking at large numbers of animals or humans. Fortunately for us, the dragons had eaten early that morning and were sluggish from digesting their food.
Look at him.
Look at his tongue, though. Look at his tongue go out.
The park ranger told us the Komodo dragon can run up to 30 kilometers an hour.
I was like,
The dragon's main method of attack is by its tail, which is used to immobilize its prey by breaking its legs. The reason these lizards are so big is that they have no predators once full grown. This enables the dragons to grow as large as 12 feet in length. Needless to say, we watched our steps very carefully. Along the trail, we came across a Komodo dragon's lair. We learned that Komodo sleeps headfirst in his hole. It's a good thing we didn't see a tail hanging out. Walking around Komodo really felt like traveling back in time. Back at the camp, one bold Komodo wondered what we were having for lunch. After a night's stay on Komodo, we bid farewell to the Kari Bahari and grabbed the busy ferry to Labuan Flores. Seeing an old man crouched under a truck for shelter that read, "So far, so good," we couldn't help but notice the irony. For 50 cents more, Bill, Catherine, Greg, and I enjoyed the matted comfort of the upper deck. A small fishing boat from Komodo docked alongside the ferry with a man who had been bitten by a Komodo dragon. He was being sent to Flores for medical treatment over 100 miles away. We couldn't help but to think that it could have been one of us. Reaching Flores, we boarded a bus and began our journey to the mystical Kelimutu. The Flores countryside was significantly less developed than any other island we'd been on. One thing remained constant though, mechanical failures and flat tires. Stuck in a small rural town with an auto repair shop and surprisingly a pool hall, Greg spent the entire day challenging locals and other tourists on our bus to pool tournaments. Catherine attempted to go into a bathroom, but it was already being used. Meanwhile, Bill and I were swarmed by curious Floresians. We were getting astonished looks from the crowd when we told them it would take us over 30 hours to fly home. Catherine met Gabriel, a Floresian bus passenger who invited all four of us to accompany him as his guests for his brother's Catholic wedding. As luck would have it, the wedding was the following day outside Bawe village. Considering Bawe was on our way to Mount Kelimutu, we gratefully accepted the offer. Finally reaching Bawe in the morning, we decided to have a little exercise and walk around the Bawe open-air market in search of a gift for the bride and groom.
Yeah.
The market was like nothing we had ever seen. Every animal from live chickens to live dogs, all herbs, ointments, and tobaccos could be bought here. I found out one of the most popular dishes in Flores was dog. Guess what we had for lunch?
Oh, look at that.
In proper Floresian Catholic tradition, we attended a sacred catchy-catchy dance, also known as a whip fight. This was in commemoration of the wedding that would be held that evening. The catchy-catchy began with the combatants in full warrior dress, singing ceremonial songs symbolically praising the wedding festivities and the marriage. Standing around us, the whole village watched our reactions with amazement. The fighters then proceeded to whip each other in order to prove their masculinity. The first one to draw blood from his opponent was declared the winner. However, the man who had the most scars on his body was considered to be the most masculine. In a sort of warped way, both opponents at the end were winners, whether by inflicting the most pain or enduring the most blows. When the catchy-catchy dance was over, Gabriel asked that Bill say something on behalf of our motley crew of Europeans and North Americans.
Tremo Kasi. Tremo Kasi.
Then Catherine was asked to initiate the dance at the close of the event by whipping a warrior. We all wound up brandishing our own styles of dancing.
Oh, it is. Bagus! 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 Thank you.
Oh, bagus food. Surreal.
The catchy-catchy and the wedding would turn out to be the most culturally interactive experiences on our whole trip. The entire town turned out for this wedding, and we were all treated like family.
Looks like a traditional wedding feast here. Should be good. I think I've taken a little too much though. The bride price was 3 buffaloes and 4.5 million rupees. And we're eating 2 of the buffaloes tonight.
Gabriel told us that Floresian weddings were arranged marriages, where the male who was the highest bidder got his bride-to-be. In this case, we learned that Gabriel's brother had paid a near fortune for his wife. Both families performed ritualistic dances displaying their satisfaction with the marriage. After the bride and groom's first dance, it was our turn to get up and join the fun. Greg's height proved to be a real novelty to Floresian girls. They gave him a nickname, Pohon, which meant tree in Indonesian. As the evening wound down, our hosts opened up a pink velvet honeymoon room. This was where the bride and groom were to consummate their wedding. But by the looks of the groom, maybe not. The following morning, we were back on the bus, heading to our final destination of the 3-colored lakes of Mount Kelimutu. Driving on the Trans-Florinesian Highway was a difficult experience, mainly because the highway wasn't finished yet. Also, landslides were a common phenomenon. Through mist and dense fog, our bus eventually made it to the crater rim. When the clouds parted in the early morning, we were left with a breathtaking view from atop Mount Kelimutu's 2,100-meter summit. The feeling on Kelimutu was like being on another planet. We stayed a couple of hours to relax and contemplate. The trip was now officially over, and it seemed appropriate to end it with silence in such a beautiful setting. Indonesia was indeed a country of contrast. After only touching on 14 islands, we couldn't help but feel we just scratched the surface. It would take a lifetime to see all 18,000 islands that make up this country. The Indonesian people were incredibly generous, spiritual, and happy people. They seemed to live a difficult yet simple life. Oblivious to what Westerners would perceive as hardships, the Indonesians worked hard and played even harder. I think Dudak said it best. Us Indonesians just keep on keeping on.
Some chemistry's mixed and some don't. What a split.
You're chickening it out is what you're doing, Bill.
Look at me. I'm in good shape.
There's a good face. Yeehaw! When we get on schedule, then we've broken our schedule, so I think it's best we just...
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Catherine.
Yeah?
Fun.
This is the biggest piece of I've ever seen in my life. It's good firewood, though.
For it in.
You don't?
No, boil it.
Boil it.
Boil it,
It's quite a good possibility that he may be a tout. In which case he's a tout? Someone who generally tries to rip you off or get commission off you by taking you somewhere where you're already going. It's usually a real pain in the
It's not our fault.
No.
That's right. We'll make it through.
We are a product of our environment. I guess the adventure is trying to find an adventure.
Yeah.